Look around. Everyone's living a life you thought was impossible. They're respected. They're powerful. They're building empires while you scroll at 2 a.m., aching, asking, when is it my turn? What if I told you the rules you've been playing by were never meant to let you win? What if everything you thought was weakness is actually your secret weapon? In the next few minutes, you'll learn the truths no one teaches you, the psychological strategies that separate the people who command respect from the people who beg for it. Stop waiting. Stop asking. Start claiming. This is how untouchables are made, your entire life. And the worst part, you've been lying to yourself too. Right now, as you're watching this, there's someone out there living the life you convinced yourself was impossible. They're getting the respect you beg for. They're commanding the rooms you shrink in. They're building the empire you dream about while scrolling through other people's success at 2 a.m., feeling that familiar ache in your chest, that burning question that keeps you awake. When is it going to be my turn? I used to ask myself that same question. I used to watch people half as smart as me get twice the opportunities. I used to wonder why I was always the one explaining, justifying, proving my worth to people who wouldn't recognize talent if it slapped them across their mediocre faces. I felt that rage, that white-hot fury when you realize you've been playing a game where the rules were designed to keep you losing. But here's what changed everything for me, and it's going to change everything for you. The game isn't rigged against you. You just never learned the real rules. While you were being taught to be nice and wait your turn, others were learning how power actually works. They were studying the psychology of influence while you were studying how to be likable. They were building unshakable confidence while you were building elaborate apologies for existing. The truth that nobody wants to tell you, the reason you're not where you want to be isn't because you're not good enough. It's because you're still asking permission from people who will never give it to you. You're still waiting for someone else to validate what you already know about yourself. You're still playing by rules that were written by people who needed you to stay exactly where you are. But what if you stopped asking? What if you stopped waiting? What if you stopped being the victim of other people's insecurities and started being the architect of your own inevitable rise? Because that's exactly what's about to happen. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the 7 psychological principles that separate the people who get everything they want from the people who get what they're given. You're going to understand why some people command respect without demanding it, why some people get opportunities without begging for them, why some people live like kings while others serve like subjects. This isn't theory, this isn't motivation, this is surgical precision applied to the mechanics of human psychology. By the time you finish watching this, you won't just think differently, you'll move differently, speak differently, exist differently in every room you enter. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I am no longer asking, I am choosing. Type it like you mean it, because after today, asking permission will feel like betraying yourself. Number 1, your mouth is your enemy. When I was 25, I learned one of the most humiliating lessons of my life. I found myself in a polished conference room, surrounded by people who made more in a single month than I could make in a year. My heart was pounding, my palms sweating, but my mind kept whispering, "Prove you belong here." So I did what most insecure people do when they feel out of place. I talked. I filled every pause with nervous chatter. I laughed too quickly, tried to sound clever, and mistook noise for value. In my head, I thought participation meant contribution. I thought constant talking would prove I deserved a seat at that table. I could not have been more wrong. Across the table sat the most powerful man in the room. He barely opened his mouth. In fact, I counted. He spoke less than 10 words the entire meeting. Yet when those words left his lips, the atmosphere shifted. People leaned forward, heads tilted. Every conversation adjusted itself to his presence. Meanwhile, I realized something brutal. The more I spoke, the less I mattered. Every nervous attempt at being witty, every unnecessary explanation, every filler word, was me handing out pieces of myself for free. I wasn't proving I belonged there. I was proving how desperate I was to belong. That was the day I discovered a truth that changed everything. Your mouth is your enemy. Every word you spill is ammunition someone else can use against you. Every rushed explanation reveals insecurity. Every time you try to fill a silence, you expose the fact that their comfort matters more to you than your authority. Silence, on the other hand, terrifies people. Why? Because silence is a mirror. When you don't fill the air, people are forced to hear their own thoughts echo back. They start projecting. They wonder what you're thinking, what you're judging, what you're hiding. And in that moment, their imagination makes you far more powerful than anything you could have said. Machiavelli warned us, everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. Silence amplifies this truth. When you withhold words, you force people to build their own story about you. They imagine intelligence, they imagine strategy, they imagine strength. And while they reveal their weaknesses through endless chatter, you remain unreadable. I began to practice this ruthlessly. Instead of competing for attention, I observed. Instead of proving my intelligence, I let others prove their lack of it. Instead of talking myself into exhaustion, I measured every word like a blade, unshathed only when necessary. And the shift was immediate. People began coming to me, chasing my opinion instead of me offering it like a salesman. They started working harder for my approval because I no longer gave it away cheaply. My silence made them uncomfortable, but it also made them respect me. Here's the paradox most never understand. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not absence. Silence is the ultimate display of control. The man who can sit still, watch others unravel, and resist the urge to explain himself. He owns the room without lifting a finger. Remember this, your words should be expensive. Spend them rarely, spend them wisely, and never forget. Silence is the loudest weapon of power. Number 2, your feelings are not your facts. 2 years ago, I experienced a betrayal that cut deeper than any wound a blade could leave. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about status, it was about trust. Someone I had opened up to, someone I believed was safe, took the private struggles I had confessed to them, and turned them into a weapon. In a crowded room filled with people whose respect I valued, they used my own vulnerabilities as ammunition, twisting my pain into a public spectacle. I can still remember that sick heat rising in my throat, that suffocating wave of humiliation burning across my chest. My instincts screamed for me to fight back, to explode, to defend myself, explain myself, justify myself. I wanted to make them feel the same crushing betrayal they had unleashed on me. I wanted to scream until I could silence their laughter. But I didn't. Something inside me, whether it was pride, survival, or the faint whisper of intuition, stopped me from reacting. I sat in silence as my reputation was toyed with. And in that silence, I learned the most valuable lesson of my life. Your feelings are not your facts. Emotions are not your identity. They are not proof of who you are. They are chemical signals. Temporary reactions that flare up like sparks. And like sparks, they can either ignite a fire that burns your entire world down, or they can fizzle out harmlessly if you refuse to feed them. That betrayal did not destroy me, it did something far more important. It revealed my strength. The ability to remain calm while someone else revealed their weakness. They thought they were exposing me, but in truth they were exposing themselves, showing everyone their cruelty, their insecurity, their lack of control, and I showed everyone something else: restraint, power disguised as stillness. This is what emotional untouchability looks like. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't lash out, you collect information. When someone betrays you, you don't crumble, you make mental notes. When someone tries to manipulate your emotions, you deny them the satisfaction of victory. You force them to choke on their failure. And no, this isn't about becoming a cold machine. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about mastering the gap between stimulus and response. It's about understanding that your emotions are signals, not sentences. You choose whether they define your actions or whether you remain the one in control. Machiavelli once wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." Understand this. Fear doesn't always come from aggression. Sometimes it comes from unpredictability, from composure so unshakable that no one can get under your skin, from the terrifying realization that they cannot control you. And when you master this, people begin to treat you differently. They seek your guidance when everything is falling apart because they know you won't collapse with them. They give you greater responsibilities because they know you can think clearly under fire. They begin to see you not just as reliable, but as untouchable. Here's the shift that changes everything. When you control your emotional responses, you no longer take other people's outbursts as verdicts about you. Their anger doesn't mean you're wrong. It means your boundary hit a nerve. Their guilt tripping doesn't mean you're selfish. It means your ambition threatens their comfort. Your emotions are not facts, they are signals, and the person who can read them without being ruled by them will never again dance to someone else's tune. Number 3, control information like your life depends on it. For most of my life, I was an open book. I thought honesty meant transparency and transparency meant strength. If someone asked how I was doing, I told them. If someone wanted to know my goals, I explained them in detail. I shared my struggles, my plans, my fears, even my ambitions with anyone who showed the slightest interest. I mistook oversharing for authenticity and vulnerability for power. I was wrong, painfully, disastrously wrong. The wake-up call came when I realized that all those harmless conversations I thought were building trust were actually building an arsenal against me. My weaknesses became entertainment. My dreams turned into punchlines. My fears became weapons in the hands of people who smiled to my face, but sharpened knives behind my back. Without realizing it, I had given away my most valuable asset, information, and I had given it freely, cheaply, foolishly. Here's the truth. They never teach you. Information is power, not money, not talent, not even influence. Those are secondary. The real source of power lies in what you know, what others don't know, and how much of yourself you allow to be known. Who controls the flow of information, controls the game. While you were being taught that sharing is caring, someone else was being taught that knowledge is leverage. Every conversation you have is an exchange of intelligence. You're either learning something useful about others, or you're carelessly handing them ammunition they can use against you later. Most people are so desperate to be liked, understood, or validated that they don't realize they're confessing their entire life strategy to people who couldn't care less. Once I understood this, I changed my entire approach. I began treating personal information as if it were classified government documents. Not because I had anything sinister to hide, but because I finally realized that mystery creates respect, scarcity creates value, and the less people know about the details of your private world, the more they're forced to respect the results you produce publicly. Think about the most powerful figures you know. How much do you really know about their private lives, their weaknesses, their next moves? Almost nothing. That's not an accident. They understand something simple. When people don't know how you do what you do, they're forced to respect the fact that you do it. Machiavelli wrote, "The wise man does at once what the fool does." Finally, most people only learn to guard their secrets after they've been betrayed, humiliated, or outmaneuvered. The wise man learns first. He shares little, listens often, and decides when to reveal something not out of impulse, but out of strategy. But here's the other side of this law. While you're disciplined about what you reveal, you must become relentless about what you collect. Pay attention when people think you're not paying attention. Listen carefully when they're bragging, complaining, or trying to justify themselves. People reveal their greatest weaknesses, not in grand confessions, but in casual comments. They'll tell you their insecurities disguised as jokes. They'll show you their blind spots when they explain their failures. They'll hand you their strategies when they brag about their successes. This is not manipulation, it is awareness. You are not exploiting people by listening. You are simply observing the battlefield while others shout their positions out loud. And here's the key. Information isn't something you hoard like a dragon hoards gold. Information is meant to be used. Precisely, surgically, at the right moment. A single detail revealed or withheld at the right time can tilt the balance of power in your favor. So guard your own information like your life depends on it. Because it does. Every word you give away without thought is another piece of leverage handed to someone else. And every word you withhold is another layer of power wrapped around you like armor. Number 4, make yourself irreplaceable through ruthless competence. For 3 years of my working life, I made the same mistake over and over again. I thought being liked was the key to survival. I made myself agreeable, always polite, always helpful, never confrontational. I flew under the radar, thinking that if I became the nice person everyone enjoyed working with, success would eventually find me. It didn't. I watched colleagues who were half as friendly, half as accommodating, but twice as competent rise above me again and again. They were promoted, rewarded, and trusted with bigger responsibilities, while I was left in the background, still waiting to be noticed. That's when I learned one of the harshest truths about the world of power and success. Being nice doesn't make you necessary. Agreeable people are easy to work with, but they're also easy to replace. Politeness, cooperation, and likability are not currency in the real game. At best, they're accessories. At worst, they're camouflage for mediocrity. What actually matters is this: competence. Ruthless, undeniable competence. Competence means becoming so good at what you do that replacing you is more costly, more risky, and more inconvenient than keeping you. Even when you're demanding respect, setting firm boundaries, and refusing to tolerate treatment beneath your value, this lesson was painful because it forced me to admit something uncomfortable. I had been using niceness as a mask for ordinary performance. I thought personality could compensate for mediocrity. I thought being pleasant could cover for the fact that I hadn't yet made myself exceptional. But competence changes everything. Competence is your shield against favoritism, moods, politics, and shifting loyalties. When you are the person who delivers results no one else can, people are forced to deal with you on your terms. They may not like your bluntness, they may not like your independence, but they will need your output more than they need their comfort. So what does building irreplaceable competence actually look like? It means you don't just do the work assigned to you, you master the system itself. You understand your craft so deeply that even people with decades of experience lean on your knowledge. You don't just meet expectations, you anticipate them. You solve problems before they exist. You see threats before anyone else notices them. Machiavelli once said, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." Most people avoid this path because it is uncomfortable. True competence means taking risks. It means questioning the way things are done. It means creating better methods even if you fail along the way. That is why so few people ever become irreplaceable. They would rather be liked than be challenged. But here's the irony. When you commit to ruthless competence, the people who once dismissed you begin to admire you. They stop questioning your every move because the results speak for themselves. They stop trying to manage you and instead try to keep you. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly open themselves. Not because you were agreeable, but because you were indispensable. Here's the most liberating part. Once you reach this level, you stop competing with other people, you stop worrying about job security, you stop craving recognition. Instead, you compete only with yourself, pushing each version of you to be sharper, stronger, more capable than the last, and the confidence that comes from this. It's not fake, it's not forced, it's earned when your work speaks louder than their opinions. Confidence is no longer a mask, it is evidence. Competence is the foundation of all power. Build it first, build it ruthlessly, build it until removing you becomes unthinkable. Number 5. Never explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. There was a time in my life when I wasted endless energy trying to justify my decisions. 5 years ago, I made a choice that to me was obvious. I walked away from a safe, predictable job, one that looked respectable from the outside but was slowly killing me on the inside. I chose a path that everyone around me labeled as reckless, unrealistic, even delusional, and the moment I made that decision public, the knives came out, families shook their heads in disappointment, friends laughed quietly and placed bets on how long I would last before crawling back. Former colleagues whispered about my arrogance. Who does he think he is? He'll be begging for stability within a year. At first, their reactions shook me. These weren't strangers. These were people who supposedly knew me. So, I did what most people do when they're doubted. I started explaining. I put together plans, financial breakdowns, timelines. I defended every move with logic and strategy. I tried to reason with them as if showing them the blueprint of my vision would make them see what I saw. But here's the brutal truth I had to face. None of it mattered. They weren't listening. They had already decided who I was, what I was capable of, and what I deserved. Their minds weren't closed because of facts. They were closed because of fear. My decision forced them to confront their own inaction, their own smallness, their own excuses, and that made them uncomfortable. That's when I learned one of the most liberating truths of my life. There are people who are not confused about you. They're invested in misunderstanding you. They need you to fail because your success threatens the fragile story they tell themselves about why they haven't tried. They need you to stay in your box because the moment you step out of it, their own limitations become harder to justify. You cannot argue someone out of a position they didn't argue themselves into. You cannot use logic against insecurity, fear, or jealousy. You cannot make someone respect you when their identity depends on underestimating you. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." This is exactly why explaining yourself rarely works. The people who misunderstand you aren't interested in your reality. They're invested in their perception, because it's easier for them to hold on to the illusion than to face the truth of your potential. Here's what changes everything. When you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your energy. That mental and emotional power can now be redirected where it actually matters, toward building undeniable results, toward relationships that don't require endless justification, toward opportunities that recognize your value without you begging for recognition. The right people don't need you to present a 10-point plan for every choice you make. They trust your judgment even if they don't fully understand it. The right opportunities don't demand you shrink yourself into someone else's version of realistic. They come because of your competence, your conviction, your consistency. This doesn't mean you shut yourself off from feedback. It means you become selective. You decide whose opinions are worth your time and whose approval isn't even on your radar. The key is ruthless discernment, knowing the difference between someone offering genuine insight and someone projecting their fears onto you. So when someone shows you through their dismissiveness, their resistance, or their refusal to acknowledge evidence that they're committed to misunderstanding you, believe them and stop explaining. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility. Their doubts are not your problem. Their inability to recognize your value does not reduce your value. Your power lies in redirection. Redirect your attention to people who are committed to seeing your worth. Redirect your focus to results that make explanations unnecessary. Redirect your energy into becoming so undeniable that even your critics are forced into silence. Some people need you to be small so they can feel big. Don't play that role for them. Stop handing out explanations like apologies. Start building evidence that speaks louder than any words ever could. In the end, the most Machiavellian move you can make is silence, not defensive silence, but The silence of someone too busy winning to bother explaining why. Number 6, build systems, not dependencies. Most people make the same mistake I once did. They confused freedom with chaos. I used to think freedom meant doing whatever I wanted in the moment. Sleeping in, quitting jobs, saying no to responsibilities, avoiding structure. To me, freedom was the absence of rules, but I was wrong. That wasn't freedom. It was fragility disguised as rebellion. Real freedom doesn't come from running away from structure. It comes from building structures that work for you. True freedom means designing systems so strong that your life keeps moving forward. No matter who betrays you, no matter who abandons you, no matter who refuses to show up, systems protect you when people fail you. Most people don't understand this. They build their lives entirely on dependency. Their income depends on one employer. Their confidence depends on their partner's validation. Their daily energy depends on whether their friends invite them somewhere. Their stability depends on their boss's mood. They call it connection. But it's not connection. It's voluntary imprisonment. They've built their lives on foundations they don't own. And then they wonder why they always feel powerless. I learned this the hard way. There was a time when my entire life collapsed in the span of 1 month. The secure job vanished overnight. The forever relationship ended without warning. The friends I thought were loyal disappeared when helping me became inconvenient. In a single season, I realized a brutal truth. Everything I thought I owned was actually borrowed. My security was rented. My worth was outsourced. My stability was fragile because it depended on other people. That crisis forced me to ask myself one question. What would my life look like if it didn't depend on anyone else's approval, consistency, or participation? The answer changed everything. Machiavelli once said, "Everyone wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Everyone wants independence, but few are willing to pay the price. The price is discipline. The price is building slowly while others chase quick fixes. The price is delayed gratification and long-term thinking." Systems are not glamorous at first. They require patience and vision, but they are the only way to become untouchable. What I mean by systems: financial systems, multiple streams of income, so one paycheck doesn't dictate your survival. Skill systems, capabilities you carry everywhere, instead of relying on a company's training or a manager's favor. Emotional systems, inner validation that doesn't evaporate when someone withdraws approval. Time systems, a schedule designed around your priorities, instead of someone else's calendar. When you build systems, you stop living in constant fear. You stop being afraid of your boss's anger because your livelihood doesn't depend on him. You stop being afraid of relationships ending because your worth isn't tied to someone's presence. You stop being afraid of uncertainty because you've already built stability inside the chaos. And here's the beauty of it. Systems create options. Options create leverage. Leverage creates power. And power, that's real freedom. Dependencies make you desperate. Systems make you sovereign. Dependencies force you to beg. Systems allow you to choose. Since committing to building systems, everything shifted. I no longer tolerate disrespect because I don't need anyone's permission to survive. I no longer chase approval because I've built validation that can't be taken away. I no longer cling to people out of fear because I know my foundation won't collapse if they walk away. Systems make you dangerous because they make you independent. And once you are independent, you can engage with anyone, not from weakness, but from strength. You collaborate because you want to, not because you have to. You walk away because you can, not because you're forced to, is the Machiavellian truth. The person with systems will always dominate the person with dependencies because when life tests you, and it always will, dependencies break, systems endure. So ask yourself, are you building a system that makes you sovereign? Or are you living inside someone else's system, waiting for the day they decide you're no longer useful? Every day you spend depending on others is a day you aren't building your own fortress. Start now. Build systems. Claim freedom. Number 7. Embrace strategic ruthlessness. This is the line in the sand. The moment where theory ends and reality begins. This is the point where we separate the people who like the idea of power from the people who are willing to do what power actually demands. Anyone can post motivational quotes. Anyone can rehearse speeches about ambition. But very few can make the kinds of decisions that cost you comfort, relationships, and even parts of your identity. That is what real power requires, ruthlessness with strategy. 3 years ago, I had to cut out my best friend, not from a business deal, not from a project, but from my life. We grew up side by side, sharing dreams, failures, and victories. But while I was evolving, building, and moving forward, he was stuck. Complaining, stalling, draining. Every conversation became a therapy session I never signed up for, filled with excuses and blame, with zero willingness to take action. And here's the brutal truth. I enabled it. I kept giving him my time, my energy, my emotional resources, because I confused loyalty with responsibility. I thought friendship meant unconditional sacrifice even when the sacrifice was killing my own growth. I thought kindness meant carrying dead weight, even if it was pulling me under. The turning point came when I realized that every hour I spent soothing his chaos was an hour stolen from my own purpose. Every ounce of energy wasted on his stagnation was energy I couldn't invest in my future. Every resource I gave away in the name of loyalty was a resource I denied myself. That was the day I learned one of the most painful but powerful truths. Not everyone you start with is meant to finish with you. Strategic ruthlessness is not cruelty. It's not about destroying people or enjoying their suffering. It's about making decisions that protect your time, your energy, and your destiny. Even if those decisions make other people uncomfortable, it's choosing your goals over their excuses, your future over their expectations, your truth over their illusions. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he wrote, "Since a prince cannot use this virtue of liberality without harm to himself, he should not mind being called misery." The lesson: sometimes you must withhold your energy, your generosity, your attention, not because you lack compassion, but because you refuse to bankrupt yourself for the comfort of others. Most people avoid ruthlessness because they mistake it for cruelty. But cruelty is reckless. It's emotional, impulsive, and short-sighted. Strategic ruthlessness is different. It's cold, deliberate, calculated. It's the recognition that your resources, time, energy, money, attention are finite. Every yes to someone else is a no to yourself. Every compromise for their comfort is a betrayal of your own potential. And sometimes ruthlessness is the kindest thing you can do. Sometimes the most loving act is refusing to enable someone's weakness. Sometimes the greatest gift is walking away so they're forced to stand on their own. Sometimes disappointing someone today is the only way they'll grow tomorrow. Here's the truth: nobody admits it. The people who achieve extraordinary things aren't always the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones willing to make the decisions. Most people are too scared to make. They're willing to endure temporary judgment, criticism, and rejection in exchange for long-term freedom, growth, and strength. Your destiny demands discipline. It demands sacrifice. It demands a willingness to cut ties, close doors, and walk away without looking back. That's what strategic ruthlessness is. The ability to detach when attachment weakens you. To say no when yes would cost you your future. To protect your empire, even if it means being misunderstood. Rejection doesn't break you. It liberates you. It reveals where your loyalty has been chained to weakness, and it gives you the power to redirect it towards strength. Strategic ruthlessness isn't about being feared, it's about being free, the untouchable truth. I want you to hear this clearly, because it will change the way you see yourself forever. You are not broken, you are not behind, you are not too late, too inexperienced, too damaged, or too anything to become exactly who you were always meant to be. The world has spent your entire life convincing you otherwise. You've been systematically programmed to believe that wanting respect, success, recognition, and power is somehow selfish, greedy, or inappropriate. You've been taught that ambition is arrogance, that setting boundaries is unkind, that prioritizing your goals is selfish. Every one of these lessons was designed to make you manageable, predictable, and small. These are lies. Psychological chains crafted to keep you compliant. And here's the truth: you can remove them the moment you decide you're done wearing them. Everything I've shared with you today comes down to one core realization. You are not here to be liked, you are not here to be comfortable, you are not here to make everyone else feel better about themselves while you settle for mediocrity. You are here to become untouchable, not through noise, not through drama, not through attention-seeking or proving yourself to people too small to recognize excellence. You become untouchable by mastering competence, strategy, emotional control, and systematic independence. By developing skills, systems, and presence so powerful that your mere arrival changes the energy of every room you enter. This journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about reclaiming who you've always been beneath all the conditioning, the fear, the people-pleasing, the self-doubt. The real you has always been capable, decisive, and powerful. You only need permission from yourself to step into it. Look around. Most people are waiting for their boss to recognize their worth, waiting for their partner to appreciate their efforts, waiting for society to validate their dreams. They're waiting for someone else to give them permission to take up the space they deserve. But you're done waiting. You understand now that permission isn't something anyone gives. It's something you claim, not stolen, not begged for, not demanded, simply claimed, because you no longer need external validation to know your value. You don't need to announce this transformation. You don't need to explain why you're different, why you're less available for their drama, why their opinions no longer guide your actions. Real power doesn't require explanation. It doesn't need applause. It is obvious in how you carry yourself, in the way your focus, energy, and results speak louder than anyone's judgment. The relationships meant to survive this evolution won't just survive, they'll thrive. Built on mutual respect instead of convenience or need, opportunities that are meant for you will align with you naturally. People who are supposed to see your worth will recognize it without you pointing it out. And the rest, they were never yours to begin with. They were placeholders, warming space until someone truly aligned with your vision arrived. This isn't the end of your journey, it's the beginning of your sovereignty. The moment you stop asking for permission and start claiming your place, the moment you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you and start building with those committed to growth, the moment you stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being irreplaceably valuable to the right people, you already have everything you need to become untouchable. You always did. The only question left is, are you ready to stop pretending you don't? Are you ready to move without apology? To exist without justification, to command respect without asking for it? You don't need to be louder, you don't need to prove anything, you just need to be the one they remember in silence. If you're done being controlled, hit like. If you're ready to claim your power, subscribe. You don't need permission anymore. Take what's always been yours. Now take a moment and let this sink in. Everything you've been taught, everything society has drilled into you about being nice, patient, and agreeable, it was designed to keep you small. But you've learned the truth. Power, respect, influence. None of it comes from asking. It comes from mastering yourself, from controlling your emotions, your words, your actions, from building systems, skills, and independence so strong no one can shake you. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late, too inexperienced, too damaged, or too anything to step into your full power. The world has spent your entire life convincing you otherwise. It told you ambition is selfish, that boundaries are unkind, that putting yourself first is greedy. Those were lies, psychological chains meant to keep you compliant, predictable, and small. Now you can remove them. The moment you decide you're done wearing them, you reclaim your life, you reclaim your sovereignty. Every principle you've learned, every lesson shared, is a blueprint for becoming untouchable, not in noise, not in drama, not in attention, but in presence, competence, and unshakable self-mastery. The moment you stop asking for permission, the moment you stop explaining yourself to the small-minded, the moment you focus on building value, systems, and relentless competence, that's when you rise. That's when the world finally responds to the real you. Your destiny demands discipline. It demands sacrifice. It demands courage. And here's the truth. The people who succeed, the people who live life on their terms, they're not smarter than you, they're not luckier than you. They simply refuse to play by someone else's rules. Now it's your turn. Stop waiting. Stop asking. Stop seeking approval. Step into your power. Claim your space. Build your empire. The world isn't going to hand it to you. But you are ready. You've always been ready. This is your life, your rules, your rise. Go take it. Good luck. And thank you for showing up for yourself today.